welcome to the Bald Ambition podcast. I am your bald host, Mookie Spitz, and my equally bald guest today with the ambition is Tony Ricci.
Yes.
Welcome aboard, Tone.
Great to be here, Mookie. And you are correct on the equally bald. My head may be a little tanner, but definitely equally as bald.
Yeah, I think we might even have had the same barber in Long Island at one point. So, Tone, they say that brains and brawn are mutually exclusive, but you're a counterfactual to that fact. You are ripped. I know the listeners can't see you, and you're a smart mofo. You are the consummate athlete, and you are a professor. So
Yeah.
can you give us a little intro in terms of how you balance that apparent dichotomy and how you bring out the best in terms of not only your physical prowess, but your intellectual strength, and how you bring those two together in terms of the great value that you provide
Yeah. All
your
right.
students and public health in general?
Well, I'll tell you this. And the good news today, Mookie, is they cannot really be separated in their entirety because what we do know, physical activity, right, and its impact on the brain is extremely beneficial. So I just want to start with this because it's such good news. Is neurogenesis, neuroplasticity, the brain, right, is just immediately improved by physical activity. So the good news is for those that are active, you are increasing cognitive capacity and very likely intelligence too. So this goes for everyone, not just myself. But at a very young age, I fell in love with sports, wrestling, boxing, and karate, and watched it through high school. Of course, participated. I was very into watching boxing and wrestling in the Olympics, and I was very fortunate. When I was 18 years old, a new major came out. It was relatively new, called exercise physiology. So what happened is I got into a situation where I was like, wow, I can actually study all the things I love and potentially study how to improve human performance in the sports that I watch on almost a daily basis. And we put the two together. And that was, I continued to train, always was into resistance training and jujitsu and judo, and loved the aspect, just the human movement aspect. And moreover, for me, physical activity, Mookie, was my medicine. Some people will get lost in painting, some in reading, maybe like you in writing, but physical activity was something that I used almost medicinally. It just made me feel better, and it was something that I invested time in and got to really work with other people, collaborate with other people, meet scores of good human beings in everything I was doing. So what happened is the sport, I stayed with it. I lifted weights. I continued to train, did judo black belt and all these different martial art disciplines. But as I continued through those sports, the research, the science, and the actual academic programs started coming out where I could continue to study and advance my knowledge. So went to college, did an undergrad, went for a couple of master's degrees over a period of time in sports science and another in human nutrition. And then later, actually considered older for a doctorate student. 29 was my first. I did one in nutrition and public health, and then later on went on to study for a second doctorate in sports psychology and psychophysiology. So the beautiful thing is I was studying the very things I was doing. So I think blending, uh, I would, I'm very, I would say hesitant to say that I'm intelligent, but I will say this, I strive for knowledge. So I was quite fortunate that with the two disciplines of training and the academic study available, I just married the two, and multiple careers have come out of it. And I think most of all, the greatest part is I've met over the course of 40 years in the industry really, really amazing people. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like you were ahead of the curve in both directions. I'm a borderline boomer, and growing up, for someone to actually be athletic as an organic part of their habit was the exception and
Yes.
far from the rule. I remember having a friend. I'm in elementary school. I used to go over to his house, And I remember his dad coming back from a jog, and he was covered in sweat and he was wearing shorts, and I was like, what's wrong with this guy? And as a society, the idea of even bodybuilding and fitness was the stuff of the Hulk comic books. And
Yes.
if you saw someone who was kind of meaty and ripped, then they were almost like a superhero. They were an exception. In the early days of Gold's Gym, it was almost eccentric and elitist back then. And obviously, the situation has evolved, and in a great way, to integrate health and wellness into everyday life. And in parallel to that, as you've described, there's been an entire scientific confirmation of the health and wellness benefits of this kind of active lifestyle. And perhaps most importantly, to the point you made about mental
Yes.
health. So being a part of that from both sides, you were ahead of the curve. And how do you see the evolution of your own career in conjunction with society's evolution and embrace of these dual aspects of what makes a good life great?
Great. It's a really great question. I would first say what makes me really happy, Mookie, is I'm going to be 60 this year, and I have 31 to 35 students in a classroom at a time. And I was their age. And when I was their age, I fell in love with the very disciplines I'm teaching them. And it's nearly 40 years later, and these students are equally excited. So I first I would like to say that this is what makes me keep going. This is what gets me excited about continuing to teach these disciplines. Because to your question, it's 40 years later, and I didn't have any advanced knowledge when I was 20 years old that this field, sports science, exercise science, health and wellness, right? And the sports psychology side, the mental well being side, I was not able to forecast that it would grow to the extent that it had and has, and that it would be acknowledged as such a wonderful part of our life, something we should really integrate. What has been so great and what gets me excited about it even still is every day I wake up and we learn that there's a new adaptation from physical activity that is of course positive that we were not aware of before. So when I was a young kid, we would talk about developing muscles. And hey, if you do weight training and you do some cardio or you do plyometric training, your muscles get stronger. That's what we looked at when I was 19, 20. Now we see the entire brain changes, the nervous system changes, the spinal cord changes, everything, the motor neurons that make muscles move change, right? So when you exercise, it's redefining to a large extent who you are at that time. You are remodeling yourself. And it's what I tell my students, and this has been the beautiful part, the evolution of it all, is that we're born maybe with a physical body that is, okay, let's say body 2.0. If you exercise, now this is both cognitive and physical, you're going to 3.0, 4.0. You are up regulating almost every system in the human body, and it's positive. And that's the beautiful thing that I've seen over 40 years. I had no idea when I was 20 years old that I might be inducing greater neuroplasticity in my brain, greater neurogenesis, making new brain cells, increasing my bone density and upgrading my nerves, all of this, like the neurons, the nerves that make muscles move. So the beautiful thing for me to be watch, and this is, like I said, I'll get up tomorrow and I'm going to read an article. Oh wow, exercise is good for this too. That's been the evolution. Of course, in sport, humans, we're advancing their performance, but for the everyday individual, the beautiful thing over the past 40 years is, wow, every day I can get up and find out there's another reason to be active. And we're going to benefit, in ways we never imagined before. That's the beautiful part of this for me.
Yeah, and you weren't the only one who had no idea as to the top end
Right.
benefits. I was in high school and I suffered from chronic depression, and the professional experiences that I had, either medical doctors or psychiatrists, Never once did they ask me about my diet. Never
Hmm.
once did they
Right.
ask me about physical activity, let alone exercise. And what I've discovered in my ripe old age, too, is that heavy duty cardio, working out, jogging, biking, swimming, is the number one way that I can maintain not only physical balance, but mental equilibrium as well. It's worked magical wonders for me. I see it in everyone around me who's athletic and exercises. Just moving the body stimulates the mind, and the mind doing better has a reciprocal relationship to the
Absolutely.
body. And
Yeah.
now it seems so obvious, and yet it was pretty much the physicians of the Stone Age only a few decades ago with regard to something that's become central to our understanding of body and mind and our holistic selves.
Yeah, yeah. You say, and it's amazing. In some part, we didn't know only 30 years ago, and yet Buddhist philosophy, yoga. I mean, they were talking about mind-body connection 6,000 years ago. Now they may not have known, that there was a prefrontal cortex, a spinal cord, and all that, but they knew that it existed. And you love, I follow you a lot, and you love all types of scientific disciplines, but I think it's really important to understand too, Mookie, from an evolutionary biology standpoint, our brain had to learn to elevate mood, to become more alert, heightened, and regenerate or even improve from movement because our ancestors didn't have the luxury to sit still. There was no DoorDash. Half the time, the shelter you had was temporary. The food, you either had to hunt, grab, gather, and if you were a gatherer, you might have taken up all of the food in a specific location and moved again. My point to all of this is as we look at the development of us as humans, brain and body, we can relax today. We can sit in front of a TV, but there was no luxury. And I should say our ancestors didn't have that luxury. They had to move incessantly in order to survive. So wisely, the brain and body seem to collaborate and say, with movement, again, increased alertness, increased attention, increased cognitive capacity, and even the ability for the brain, like I've been mentioning over and over, to regenerate, to create new neurons and become more plastic. So when I look back on it, I go, well, no kidding. That makes all the sense in the world. But to your point, I never, as a matter of fact, when I was 15, all the physicians told me to do was stop working out so much. So I am very blessed, like I said, or very happy and fortunate that the career I chose has become something that is one of the few remaining things in life where you can every day put in an investment and you're guaranteed a positive result. It's pretty neat, actually.
Absolutely. It's the one thing that we can always do just for ourselves,
Yes.
which is work out, which is exercise, is to get fresh air and be outside, pump weights, run, burn, 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 baby. And
Exactly.
that's between us and our own bodies and our own minds. And it's rejuvenating each and every time. And
Yep.
as you mentioned, modern humans are the tip of the iceberg of our evolutionary history. We've been air quotes civilized for what? 5,000 years less?
Hmm.
We've been pretty much this same species for what? 300,000, half a million years?
Exactly. We don't know
So so
exactly, but right.
so it's from our body and mind's point of view, we're still in small tribes running around on the savannah, hunting and foraging and living not alone day to day, but moment to moment.
Right.
And we are designed that way. And in a sense, we've come full circle and we've had to rely on our intellect to remind us about the essence of who we are and where we come from. It's kind of ironic.
Yeah, great point. We have to actually we have to go backward, right? We have to think and go, well, wait a minute, right? We were moving, we were active, and we're not doing that now. With everything becoming so advanced and technology becoming so advanced, we had to sit back and think and go, well, we better back up and at least pretend that we're going back 10,000 years, and exercise is what mimics all the activity that would have occurred on a daily basis, and even 5,000 years ago, to your point, we become a little bit more civilized. We build cities, of course, and we're more agrarian, but still, a large part of the day, is still consumed by being extremely active, whether you were gathering, farming, or whatever it might have been. So,
Yeah,
activity, yeah, it's mandatory or womandatory, whichever you prefer, or both for
right.
for our species. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So our species is getting smarter, and gyms tend to fill up in January because just about everyone knows what we have just shared to be true on some level. And
Mhm.
they've taken it to heart to the point where they actually conscientiously want to take more initiative to become healthier, both mentally and physically. So, as I'm mentioning, gyms fill up, but then they also clear out within a week or two. And there's a general zeitgeist, I would fairly say, where as a culture we know better but tend to do differently. Obesity is at record levels despite what we're sharing right now.
Yes.
The overall level of health in the United States plateaued and seems to be getting worse, especially post pandemic. So what's the disconnect, Tony? Why do we know so much and yet do so little? Why do we disregard the common sense and even the science of health and wellness? And why are we tanking across all these metrics and then precipitating the preventable illnesses that we know are a direct result of streaming Netflix instead of working out?
Yes, great questions, right? And they've been asked for some. That's a great. It's just they've been asked for some time, and if you have 20 people who've dedicated their life to this, Mookie, they'll probably give you about 4 or 5 answers that are quite consistent, but not one specific thing, obviously, that it could be narrowed to. I think I'm gonna give some rational thoughts here. First, for many now, they're not growing up with physical activity. And, and even people my age, are not growing. First of all, they're not working in a physical environment or with a hard type of physical labor. And then they're not growing up with as much physical activity. Now, I still have fond memories of being young and everything being physical. And as we know, when your brain is young and developing and you're enjoying sport, the formation of nerves and neurons at that age are going to be quite permanent. And particularly if it was something very like a really a bad experience or a very positive experience. So many of us grew up with sport and activity and running around and being physical, and that has followed us through our entire life. So I think, us entering into physical activity is probably easier. For some people, if they don't grow up with it, it may not translate or they may not see the potential pleasure in it later in life. Secondarily, too, I assume, and I did this a lot when I was young, and probably incorrectly, very incorrect, I should say, that everybody gets the same response from physical activity. You and I both. I mean, we moved because sometimes our mood wasn't that great, and it really helped us. So for me, I think, wow, if someone goes for a jog or maybe they go for a walk, they're going to feel really good or really much more elevated in mood later. And I'm not sure that always happens with people. While I would think that physiological response would be somewhat consistent, it probably varies quite a bit. So some people might be physically active and just kind of go, I don't get it. I'm not really enjoying this. So I think the first is if they don't grow up with it, it's harder to either enter or sustain. Two, I know not everybody just loves being active. It's contrary to evolutionary biology, but it seems that way. And I think the third is, boy, you really have to go into an exercise routine in January if you have not done it consistently with somebody just really leading you in the right way. I think the concept for many people in January is like, gotta, even still, as incorrect as it may be, throw a hooded sweatshirt on, get on the bike, and suffer and be in a little bit of pain. When the truth is, if you want to be healthy, walking is still number one. I'm not if you want to climb Mount Everest or play in the NFL or fight in the UFC. But if you want to be healthy, walk. Find a place, find a park, put your music on. And you incorporate that with a little bit of resistance training so that the muscle system stays strong. You maintain it through life. You keep your bone density. The truth is, for health, the rate of entry, I'm sorry, the level of entry for activity that works is really low. And that's the good news. But I'm not sure everybody perceives it that way, right? They go to the, why are they going to the gym? Because they feel they have to do something well above and beyond what they were probably doing currently. To my point is, the healthiest people I've ever known, and they're all in my family, they want to die at 90 and live to 100. All they ever did was walk. They remained physically active. And you complement that with maybe dancing or some small machines occasionally or some dumbbells, you've got a healthy lifestyle. So some of the factors I see are that. And just the last point, four, is of course our food structure is abysmal. And the accessibility is the problem, not the only problem, but a big part. Because I can go to work, I could be late for work, and I don't have to worry about bringing food with me. I can go 50 different places to get it on the way to work or during work, none of which are going to be all that good for me. So I think it's the collection of those four or five, as I see it, as to why we can't move the needle and get people to remain active on a consistent basis. If their climate allows and they can go walk every night, boy, they're 60% on their way to being healthy.
So it sounds like problem number one is blame the smartphone. The iPhone came out in 2007, and it literally was a paradigm shift across the board regarding lifestyle, personal habit, and our absorption and immersion and obsession with technology.
Mhm.
And what I'm hearing from you is you and I are about the same age, and we grew up playing softball in the alley. We played
Yes.
frisbee in the park. We played football on the street, on the concrete. We were running around. We were outdoors. We were engaged. And this led to not only actually dating in high school, meeting real people and interacting with real humans, but it also led to our tacit embrace of physical exercise as an organic and natural extension of our lives.
Yes.
Of course we were active. What the hell else were we going to do?
Exactly.
Stare
Yes.
at the black and white TV, which weighed 700 pounds and had three channels on it? Right? We're going to go outside and kick some ass and take some names. This was a natural part of growing up.
Yes.
And I see it in my own kids who are 18 and 22. And everything from being isolated, contributed by the pandemic, of course, but also just how they grew up with being digital natives, just
Mhm.
living online, on demand content demanded their full attention. And my younger one got into some flag football and got engaged, but he did it with half an ass cheek. He was always just staring at the computer or staring at his iPad. And there's a sense of loss there for our society, not only in terms of interpersonal communication and development, but as you illustrate, and this is really revealing, I never really thought about it that way, but it's precluded us from really engaging with our bodies as well. But
Yeah.
it's not, when you define exercise as a chore, then you're much less likely to do it.
Exactly.
And that's your other key point, which is if it becomes a burden instead of just a natural way of self-expression and a joyful sense of release, then the likelihood of you engaging with it precipitously declines, right? And when that's combined with your second point, which is some people don't necessarily have a natural proclivity to love exercise.
Right.
I know a lot of people like that, Tone, who are like, they count their sit-ups. I did 32 yesterday. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? I was on the Peloton for an hour and a half, drenched in sweat. I'm listening to my death metal, and I loved every second of
Exactly.
it because I was burning, baby. And there's people who just don't get it. They're like, why would I want to do that? And that goes into your other point of perfectionism. Like, if since it is a burden and I don't want to do it, then if I do it, then I gotta go all in.
Right.
Like I need to really be a workout kind of guy or gal. And the truth is, just as you mentioned, take a walk. Get the hell out of the house. Just
Exactly.
move your body. And I think the last point you made is really, really striking, which is our food sucks. Our whole attitude to health is garbage in, garbage out. And when you feel like shit and when you do shitty things, then you end up just with a shitty body and attitude, right?
Unfortunately, yes, and you sometimes you don't know that, right? It's definitely the frog in the water and turning the degree up,
Right.
right? And it just is, Mookie. And um, but like I said, the good news for health, we're not, you and I, we love it. I once went to an art museum with my buddy. He loves art, he loves to paint. And, I appreciate everything in life when people are good at something. But honestly, art doesn't move. I love movement. I love movement arts. I love ballet. I love dance to watch, that is. So I went to the Brooklyn Museum of Art and I could have left in 5 minutes. I'm like, this guy's great. This guy's awesome. She's amazing. This guy's taking too many mushrooms, and I have no idea what this guy's doing. Then I wanted to get out of there, right? But he could stare at that picture for 2 hours looking at the depth and the contrast in colors and how the artist brought it to life. And his brain gets excited about that. And I do think, that happens to us. Like, I understand when somebody tells me, Tony, or hey, I'm not doing what Mookie did. That's, you got to be crazy to do that. And maybe they would think they have to be, but they don't have to be crazy to put on some good headphones and go for a walk, or maybe even just hear the birds chirp and get a little sun and just move. And you said what I think is very important, and that is, the sports psychology saying, and of course amongst every discipline, perfectionism is the enemy of good. If you drive to perfectionism every time, I have been booted out of so many things by myself, that is, that I loved due to perfectionism. And we don't need that in physical activity. And it's what it is. It's physical activity. If you love to dance, please just do it as often as you can and complement it with a walk or two. And then maybe find some way to go in a pool and get some resistance training. But the other thing I think that people miss out on is any form of movement that you enjoy, that's exercise. That counts. Because the research does show that if you like, you like to run, Luke, you're a pretty good runner, and I do it. I'm not very good, but let's just say we both hated it, and we go for a 10-mile run. We hate every step. We're going to get some benefit. We're going to get cardiorespiratory improvements. We're going to get greater vascularity to the working muscles. Our brain's going to get a little neuroplasticity and neurogenesis, but it won't be nearly as much benefit as if we loved it.
Yeah, I think you bring up the key solution to this problem. And what you're illustrating, in a sense, is gamifying your physical
Mhm.
fitness. And by that, I mean, we all need goals and we need intentionality and motivation. And I think the mistake that's made and the solution that could work to offset that is make whatever you do fun
Exactly.
and do it in your own way. So, you illustrate like running. And for a long time, I was allergic to running because I figured it's kind of boring. I have an overactive imagination. I've got a dopamine deficiency. My brain needs more and more of it, and the way that it gets the dopamine is through incessant distraction. I need to. My concentration is about 30 seconds, and if I don't change it up, then I'm freaking out.
Mm.
So, what happens when you're jogging? Well, you're spending a half hour, an hour just bobbing up and down and listening to the birds and looking at the sunshine. So, my mind would wander. And the solution to this problem became the motivation for my running,
Hmm.
which is pop on the headphones.
Yep.
I listen to my favorite podcasts, audiobooks, and death metal music. So all of a sudden, running became my very favorite thing to do because it was my time, it was meditative, and through the intense cardiovascular engagement, the endorphins rose in my brain. I entered that runner's high of deep meditation. And instead of being bored, it was exactly the opposite. It was deeply meditative. My mind was wandering off into all sorts of directions on my podcasts, listening to my music. And I felt like I had an out of body experience while my body was doing all of this intense cardiovascular activity. That became my ticket to ride.
Yeah, that's see, and what a great story, because I think it helps other people realize that they can find some form of physical activity that they enjoy, or because they don't at one given point, you also, you made it yours, and what I mean by that is, you love to think, you love to write, you love to create. Well, I tell everyone, and right, whether it's during a run or during cardiovascular activity, and right after, you may be in your peak in thinking and creativity. So that's why also it's great for you to escape that way and get away and think about your podcast, your writing, and so forth. And when you wanted to, what did you do? You complemented it with some death metal if you were in the mood. You made it and defined it as the way Mookie would want to do it, and not like, I got to run this pace, I got to run these miles, here's the terrain they say is best. So I think if somebody can do what you did, how can I walk? How can I do something? And how can I label it as my own, if you will, or maybe even create it as my own? I think that really would help individuals initiate physical activity to begin with and potentially stay with it. And that's it. I am so biased because I know it's so good for us. And it disappoints me when someone can't find a way. It doesn't have to be the running. It could be bicycling on a path along the beach, and that is wonderful for someone. So I it's my hope that when someone listens to this that may not be already involved in physical activity, maybe they can sit back and think, well, what can I do? What do I like to do? What form of movement appeases me the most? And how can I be consistent with it? And if you can do that, again, volitional and enjoyable. Volitional and enjoyable. Same thing in elite sport performance. You cannot, if you are at some point absolutely hate what you're doing, you will not advance your performance. So those are the two words I look for. Volitional. Hey, what do you like to do, or what appeases to you the most? And let's find a way to make it fun and interesting and constructive, exactly how you did with your running.
And it's very personalized, to your
Yes.
point. It's unique to everyone. There's this sense that physical exercise and physical excellence is a homogeneous metrics based expression. So if you don't run a 9-minute mile consistently, then you're a loser. Or if you can't bench press 300 pounds, then you're a weakling. So we assign these arbitrary ad hoc generic benchmarks to performance through equally arbitrary metrics.
Right.
And then we get caught in that perfectionist cycle that I suck and therefore I'm not going to do this at all. When the reality is the exact opposite. It's not about these objective metrics of success. It's about what makes you happy and how
Exactly.
you yourself define a good time.
Yeah.
And a good time that incorporates physical activity into your day in a way that you actually look forward to. I look forward to exercising. I will go out of my way during a course of a busy day to swim, to bike, to run, because it makes me feel so good, especially when I listen to my favorite author or podcasting ranter
Right.
or
Right.
death metal band. It's my time, baby. My time. Leave me alone. Fuck off. I am going to get into this world that involves heavy duty cardio.
Yes. And you said something too that really struck me too. Well, and you're right about all the parameters we're putting on them. Oh, we have to do this, we have to do that. You don't have to do anything. You have to move a little bit and enjoy it. And not every day has to be exactly the same duration, always 10,000 steps, or, always 30 minutes doing something here or 30 minutes doing a given thing. And so I think taking some of the numbers off in the initial phases and just trying to increase any form of activity or any level of activity is was what may be most important, and not like we said, the perfectionism is really hard. If the person, another thing I think would be so important, there may be a day, even if it's just walking, okay, and you've had a good 2 weeks and you feel inspired, and you know what, a couple in 1 week you don't feel great and you're not as inspired. That's friggin' okay. Okay, motivation. Oh, I got to stay motivated. I'm not motivated. Now, anybody who excels in any given endeavor is not always motivated. It's not possible. Just do what you can when you can. I have trained since the age of 12 and many times really hard, but I would say 60% was not that hard, but it was enough to connect the times that I was able to go and really push. So my point to this is, please, for those, sometimes they say, well, I'm not really in the mood to do this. It's okay to not be in the mood, but give what you can that day, because you know why? If you're not in the mood for 1 week, maybe even two, you sometimes inexplicably, your motivation may come back. And what you want to have done is connected the times where you really feel like doing it with the time you don't to the time you feel like it again. So I just want to say too, because this is really what we go through in sports psychology when I work with elite athletes. Tony, I lost my motivation because you're a human being. Okay. What are we going to do when we're not in the mood? It's okay. If we have to lighten the intensity, if we have to lighten the load, we'll do it. But we're going to show up. And that is the time, particularly, to take the perfectionism or the metrics off. Hey, I've been walking 10 miles a week for 3 weeks now, but I don't know, I'm not in the mood this week. Then do 5. Do the
Yeah,
best you can.
embrace your mediocrity and
Exactly.
do so in a way where you take the heat off.
Perfect.
Without that infinite expectation comes reasonable goal setting, which need not go further than, let me go outside and get some fresh air, take a mile walk, or jog a little bit, or pop the headphones on and get away from it all. Anything that works for you, anything and everything in micro doses or tsunamis, just you be you. Just try to make it a daily part of your existence.
That's perfectly stated. And I love the doses versus tsunamis. It's
Yeah.
okay for micro doses. Just keep the micro doses consistent, because then you'll be able to create a tsunami. Where what we just want to try to do is not fully start all over again. In sports, every athlete has an off season. You can't go hard year round. No one does. So it is okay to have those days or that brief month where you don't feel very excited and motivated about it. But connect the dots, meaning I'm extremely motivated, I'm not now, because that day is going to come where, you know what, I'm feeling good again. I'm interested in being active today. So to your point, microdose in between the tsunamis. And that will keep you in the game always. And in the long run, really maintaining good health as opposed to having to start over all over again, every second or third year, if you will.
Yeah, and on the other side of the spectrum are the ultra achievers. And I think listeners, even those listeners who might struggle with the basics in terms of daily exercise, I think could benefit of a lot from your direct experience training and coaching some of the world's greatest athletes. And I think it's particularly relevant because there's a mindset around not only ambition, but its realization. And I think many of the things that we've been discussing for the simple maintenance of basic health and wellness actually apply to superstars as well, but it's kind of hypercharged.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell our listeners a little bit about some of the folks on the high end of the performance spectrum, the fighters, the bodybuilders,
Yep.
these people who are operating at peak performance? What's the magic? What's the motivation? What differentiates somebody who's, struggling to take a 10-minute walk from someone who is a world-class MMA fighter, let's say?
Well, I think, believe it or not, we already talked about it to an extent. Uh, you can, no matter, so I'll say this. What I've learned from working, for those who don't know, I did a lot of performance coaching at the UFC level and, MMA and really high levels, boxing, UFC, and so forth. Mostly performance and nutrition. But sometimes I could look at an athlete, Mookie, and you will look at people in the fight gym. And there's some people that train because they want to be a fighter. And then there are some people that love to fight. And simply what I mean by that is, I don't, even Tom Brady, as hard as they work, in some cases, what they're lucky. And what I don't mean in the sense where they don't work hard. I'm not saying that, but they found something that so moves them, that so intrigues them, that gives them, independent of how aggravating it could be at times, how depressing it could be at times, they really love what they are striving for. They love it. As hard as it might be, there's something about it they can't even always articulate that they love. So, my point to all this is that's what keeps them going, even when they're not in the mood. They're going to push through because somehow or another, this is what they love and they know it. Almost like a relationship where there will be times probably where spouses, all right, they go through phases and you just go through the motion and you love that person. You don't feel it every moment for that month per se, but you know logically that you love them. And then that comes back a little bit, the feeling. It's the same thing for these great ones in sport. They want to be where they are at that time. So the truth is, yeah, they're pushing. Yeah, they'll do the extra work. But there's something in them that really likes doing this, because I don't care how hard you try. If you don't love doing something, you're not gonna keep doing it. If you don't like it, you're not gonna last at all. So I just want to note that they are high achievers. They do push. They keep training really hard. But the reason why we see that as so, I would say, outstanding, phenomenal, is because we know there's physical pain and time associated with it. But when Mookie sits down and writes for 8 hours, which a lot of people can't do, we might not go, oh my gosh, look how amazing that is, because we don't think it hurts. We don't think you're breathing heavy. We don't think you're dying. So we lessen really if you will, the magnitude or how difficult it might be. So these men and women love what they're doing. They found something. I want to make that clear first because I don't think we can separate that. Otherwise, we think we're dealing with this discipline machine that just does what it has to do no matter what every day. And that's not what these people are. Most of them love being there, despite the fact that sometimes the pain sucks, the results suck, the people they're collaborating with can suck, but they love where they are at that moment.
Yeah, I've heard that talent is a combination of aptitude and attitude.
Mhm.
So if you like and love what you do, then you're gonna do a lot of it. And if you do a lot of something, you're gonna get better at it. And then it becomes self-reinforcing. So as you get better at it, you like it even more. And then you like it and love it even more. So you find yourself doing it all the time. And then you're doing it all the time, even if it hurts sometimes, even
Exactly.
if you're exhausted, even if you're not in the mood, because you've come to like it and love it so much that you do it so much that you're really good at it, and that just makes you love it even more. It's self-reinforcing. It is positive feedback, and it is driven by an intrinsic love of doing it.
Yes.
And I think that's what you're describing here, that when we look at elite athletes, they're in such a rarefied segment of the human population, and we instantly attribute superhuman qualities that, John McEnroe was just an alien being. There's no way to explain what's going on here, right? And what you're saying, that mofo just loved playing tennis.
Couldn't wait.
And then he
Yep.
loved fucking killing people on the court, because there's another aspect to this, which is what defines how you love what you do. Well, you
Love
could
it.
love it just because you love to sweat, or you love to move, or you love kicking ass. That
Yes.
could be part of it too.
Absolutely. You said it perfectly. You love it and you love being good at it. And you know that when I threw the ball and that guy caught it, I got the coolest feeling in the world. Imagine if I could throw that ball even better and make more people catch it. And that's where they get up every morning and they're willing to do the extra work because they hold on to the feeling, the highest feeling they could get, to be good at it, to they know the feeling that when they score the touchdown or when they're ahead 5 meters in a 100 meter sprint, right? They know that feeling. And that's what makes them get up in the morning. Okay. And that's what makes them do the things when they're not in the mood or not, they're not entirely prepared or motivated for that. They're hanging on to what they love, and to your point, the love may come from beating other people. That's okay. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's okay. But they still have to love the art of the sport itself, because otherwise they'll probably just go off and find another way to beat people and something else, right? So they still love, McEnroe still loved the feeling he got in his forehand. There was pleasure, and most of the time there was when he moved in that manner. He was receiving positive feedback, even sometimes if the shot sucked. Right? You get aggravated, he didn't have a good day, and nobody showed you that more than he did. But nevertheless, most of what he did, the body and mind are being rewarded while they're doing it. Otherwise, you're not going to get them there. And then just quickly, you have your freaks who are so genetically gifted that they barely do anything and they're just as good as everyone else. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, because it does. There are some people out there that are so athletically gifted that they don't have to do a lot of what you and I are discussing right now, and they can just hang. And that happens. That's the 1% of the 1%. But most of them get out there every day, excited about what they're doing, excited about being better at it, and then do whatever it takes to get that feeling back. That's really, in many cases, what they're looking for, that split second of high from completing that pass, from landing a punch, right? Or winning the sprint. So,
And and everyone's got their ceiling. So you described the 1% of the 1% who have DNA. They have
right, right.
sequencing of their nucleosides that program proteins in their body and a morphology that, from a biochemical and biomechanical point of
Yep.
view, they're bound to kick your ass, even if they try a tenth as hard, just based on who they are, how they're wired, and how they're built. That's an incontrovertible fact. At the same time, they need to love what they do, and they do need
Yeah.
to work at it. They just have an unfair advantage, and those who take advantage of it are the ones who become the absolute pinnacle of every sport.
You got it. You got it. That is Brady, who wasn't even that gifted. That is Kobe. That is Michael Jordan, right? And you have the rare freaks, as I said, that just love playing on a Sunday, like Lawrence Taylor, that is one of maybe the top five football names of all time, and he wasn't, the same. He did. Don't get me wrong. He went to practice. He did his thing, but he went out. He enjoyed life, and he wasn't a Brady. He wasn't a Jordan. He wasn't even a Kobe, because those guys are vicious in their tenacity and dedication and desire to improve. So he's that 1% to 1% where you get those rare individuals. But for the most part, you are coupling it and marrying it with the genetics, like you said, a bunch of DNA running around. That just made you different. And then the desire. Now you started and you loved it. Now you love the feeling of it. You love the feeling of winning. You love the feeling of succeeding. And all of a sudden you're like, wow, I'm really good. Let's see if I can become even better. Right. And that's what drives these guys. But I do want to say, in most cases, hey, they are disciplined, they work hard. I'm not taking any of that away from them. But they are doing something that they fell in love with it, in most cases, at a very young age, and they're getting to do it through a large portion of their entire lifespan.
Yeah, and you're destroying the myth that in order to advance yourself in life, you need to do what you hate, get over that hump, just deal with it, and have the grit and determination to grind through hours every day doing something that you hate for ostensibly some higher goal. And what you're advocating is in a sense screamingly obvious, which is do what you love, and
Yes.
then you'll do more of it, you'll get better at it, and then if you happen to have the luck of either the body or the circumstance, it might even turn into a career for you. But
That's
it really just boils down to who you are, what you love, and doing more of it, not less of it.
right. No, that's exactly correct. And again, I don't want to take away. There are days, like I said, right? Tom Brady got up in the morning at 5 o'clock in the morning. Maybe he didn't want to lift weights, but he knew it was the right thing to do. Maybe he didn't want to eat or not eat tomatoes, whatever TB12 says. Okay, maybe so. But he did it. He did it knowing that this is the way I feel when I achieve this. And that's it. That's the purpose, though. The purpose, Mookie, does have to transcend, everyday actions. It definitely does. And because there are some things, the detailed things are not always exciting to be good at something. Okay. Maybe they have to do a couple of drills over and over again that they're not in the mood for that particular day, or they have to do some type of mobility work and they don't particularly love stretching, but they do get it done. Right. But again, what are we really asking? They're not charging the beaches in Normandy. We're asking them to get up a little bit earlier, do a few things that are going to contribute to their success in something they love, and make it work. So, being in sport my whole life, I love human performance, but I'm hard pressed to look. I admire when somebody keeps pushing. I really do, and I admire when they love it and they do it, and they do it in what we would deem the correct way. But at the same time, it's a sport, right? So the elite, yeah, they push, but it's a bit of genetic, it's a bit of loving what they do. And to your point, sometimes you just need some luck, because you could have slid into second base in high school and been one of the best prospects for college, but maybe had a severe injury when you slid. And you may not have had that opportunity. So I think every athlete, as hard as they work, can pat themselves on the back for that, but ought to be grateful too that they've had a little bit of luck on their side as well.
Yeah, we talked about the delta between understanding that that would be the case. And this was earlier in our conversation in the sense of people knowing that exercise and health and wellness are vital. They sign up at the gym. And then by the end of January, early February, they're toast. They're done.
Mhm.
And you and I just talked about the rationale for that and offered some great solutions. When we're talking about the intrinsic love of excellence on this competitive level, I'm also sensing a bit of a societal disconnect, and I'm curious about your attitude around this. As you just described, the essence of star performance and even mediocre performance with enthusiasm is the love of what you do. So it's grounded in feeling great, having fun, self-actualization.
Yes.
Then the problem here that I'd love to hear from you about is why, as a society, are we becoming meaner, more transactional, and more competitive in a petty way? The essence of sports, team sports, and even personal excellence is to set goals, to exceed them. When we're talking about competitive sports, where you have star athletes coming together as a team, playing against other teams, ostensibly for everyone's satisfaction, there seems to be a zeitgeist in this country, and I just want to tap into your feelings about this, where it gets a little bit perverse, where we're putting competitiveness and winning above all else. As a society, we seem to be getting progressively worse at appreciating the intrinsic value of sports, of physical exercise, and we're becoming, in a sense, worse people year after year. And this is expressed, everywhere online, with people being mean
Yes.
to each other, our political polarization. And I no means want to dovetail into a political conversation with you, but I think you see where I'm getting at with this question, which is the essence of excellence, ambition. When it comes to physical activity and sports and human health and wellness, is grounded in loving what you do.
Yes.
And unfortunately, the expression of so much of what we see online in competitive sports, and even in sports gambling, which is like becoming the underbelly of this
Mhm.
stuff. What's going on, Tone? Why are we fucking this up when everything you described is just so joyful at its core?
Yeah, boy, there are so many good sports sociologists too. And I read a lot of their work in earlier days, and I need to get back to some of what they have to say today. Mookie, I think, listen, the immense amounts of money, just changed the dynamics of everything. They really do, and I'm not against it. If the athletes can make the money, but it changes the view of sport in itself to completely a business. I just the way I don't know if it's because, to your point, it's almost as if we're only getting used to interacting. It doesn't matter what the subject matter is. It's almost always combative right now. So maybe politics has played a big role in this, and unfortunately, it probably has. It disappoints me that people disagree. I could vehemently disagree with somebody. That doesn't mean I don't love them and they're not still going to be my friend, and I'm not going to jump in front of a bullet for them. But you have people disowning each other because of different political beliefs. Now, and then online in the sport community, um, there's so much ability now for each individual to state an opinion, to give a perspective, to doubt someone else's success if they were hoping they didn't have it. They're like, I'll go online and I'll watch, my favorite sports teams. And you have people, to your point, Mookie, just calling each other brutal names because they disagree about a manager, right? I'm afraid that, sport too, and as we communicate about it, it's we're just losing our capacity to. It's become so binary. Everybody is right in their view. This is the reason for everything that happens in the world. In their view, they know it. And there's no real sense of dialogue anymore. Now, what is happening in sport too? I think there's a lot of athletes that are highly visible, sometimes flamboyant, sometimes a little bit loud, and that pisses people off, and they say horrible things online. The athlete gets pissed. Okay, the other thing too, because of the money in sport, it's changing and it's almost, as to your point, completely transactional. Like there's no teams anymore. Half the guys that I root for on one team are going to be on another one next year. So the climate is changing, and I don't fully understand why. On the field itself, the sport seems to be played and executed in a manner, of course, at a higher physical level, but that's relatively similar to what was 20, 30 years ago. But the way we consume it, the way we view it, the way we bet on it, the way we talk about it, the way we look at a different fans. I mean, I know that some people hate the Chiefs because Taylor Swift likes the Chiefs. Like what the and so you're ruining your you're ruining the whole point of the sport because you just don't like Taylor Swift or whatever she stands for. So I can't right now, to be honest with you, isolate it to just sport itself, but I think it's a more global societal way of behaving, and that's really disappointing because sport was supposed to be exactly what it is. It's a friggin' escape, and it can be a fun one, and it ain't much more than that. It's really not much more than that. So hopefully, and you can't even enjoy it anymore. But you got one team. Oh well, they accuse the other team of cheating, right? The Yankees accuse the Astros of cheating. Now Yankees and Astros fans are bantering. You can't even enjoy their games anymore. They're online cursing each other out. So we're losing. We're almost losing the good in everything we do, or the potential good for it. I wish I had an answer. I still hold on to sport is something where we could get lost and not have to do this. But unfortunately, it rears its head in this too now.
Yeah, and again, it sounds like we could go ahead and blame that iPhone from
Well,
2007,
it's
right?
not
I mean,
helping.
it's
It's not
like
helping.
it's not helping. It's like everyone's a creator and everyone's got an attitude and everyone's engaging, which are all great. But this constant chatter and back and forth and the fragmentation that's ensued by siloing people up into their respective tribes, whether it's politics or cultural issues or
Exactly.
sports, it's like pouring kerosene on the fire of what
Yep.
was there already, accelerating it. And to your other great point, it's the money, honey.
Yeah.
When salaries and commissions go into the millions and the tens of millions, when sporting teams like the Celtics were just purchased for an
Mhm.
astronomical amount of money, billions of dollars. What was it, $31 billion for a sporting team?
It's
It's like the GDP of half of Africa. When the stakes become that high, and when fans and everyone participating, whether you're on the team in the stands, or you're an owner, or you're an equity stakeholder, and you've got a phone and you're ranting, it is just a mix, which leads to all the worst aspects of what ostensibly should be, as you point out, a release,
yeah.
an escape. And
Exactly.
as I asked from the beginning, it's like it's a labor of love at its core, and all these factors come to corrupt it in ways that just make it just so cringy, right? It's just too bad.
We're really good at ruining things that are good.
Yes.
I wish that was not the case, but you said it. Look, one guy, the guy in the Mets, right, who went to Juan Soto went to the Mets for 765 billion. I'm sorry, $1 million, almost 1 billion just to play baseball. And he got a signing bonus, I forgot, of maybe 50. So he's over $800 million. just to play baseball. He's almost paid $1 billion to play baseball. Now, and by the way, the discourse in that Yankee fans hate the Met fans because they took him. Met fan, we can't even enjoy something that's meant to be mindless because because the money's part of it. I'm not one who believes that the love of money is the root of all evil. That's the old biblical quote. It's pretty darn close, but nevertheless, I do to the point. And this is the way, though, Mookie, we've learned to communicate with each other. And I think Facebook's a big part of it. What I see people say to each other on Facebook over politics, like it hurts me, and I'm not even joking. It hurts me. Like, how could somebody's mom voted differently than me? Somebody's mother did. So I'm going to go out and call anybody who votes for Kamala or Trump. Listen, I could be highly disappointed. I could be worried about the state of the country. But to call these people all kinds of like brutal, evil names. Yeah, I'm calling somebody's mom that. Like, I wish people would just like think about what the hell you're doing for a minute.
Yeah,
Like,
and it makes us stupid. I mean,
it
even
does.
data, we're talking about health and wellness, and even data from the COVID lockdowns is
Uh,
now being analyzed. And again, we're not
yeah.
being political here.
No, no. Yeah.
You're a scientist,
Yes.
and I'm a science geek. And I've got a flair for numbers. I mean, I was one of the early people who predicted that we would get screwed by this
You
thing.
did.
But
Your predictions were pretty good. I gotta
yeah,
say, yeah.
and in retrospect, I'm looking at the numbers again in terms of analyzing the results of the lockdowns, and it's really showing that many of the heavy extended lockdowns were not effective.
Hmm.
And again, I'm not trying to stir controversy, but the entire scientific community is coming to the conclusion that many things that the government took for granted and were espousing as the mantra for reducing human suffering have proven to be wrong.
Hmm.
And the reason I bring that up within the context of this conversation is that we are so polarized and we're so tribal, not only in our politics and our culture, but even with our sporting teams,
Exactly.
that we're making ourselves stupid. It's
Yes.
like it's if you take an us against them attitude across the board, then you become ignorant. You're isolating yourself from information. And in a sporting kind of context, you're losing perspective as to what the ostensible goal here is from the beginning, which is sweat it out, have a good time, compete in an environment where the rules are a given and it's, the best team wins.
That's it.
And
Yep.
then you go home and then you figure out what you're going to have for dinner. It
Leave it.
shouldn't be
Yeah,
an
exactly.
existential crisis. Now
Yes.
there's obviously a lot of fun to be had with team rivalries,
Oh,
and that's
it's great.
healthy. That's
No,
healthy.
absolutely right.
Yeah,
Poking fun, hating the
poking
Red Sox.
fun.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
gonna kick your ass if
Yeah.
you're wearing a Yankees hat in this
That's what makes it
neighborhood.
exactly.
That
That's what
that
makes it
that
great.
shit is great. That's like just the kvetching and then the elbow rubbing that's normal for sports. But just like everything else, we just don't know when to stop. We don't
Exactly.
know when to hold back, and we're addicted to our own outrage.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. You're absolutely right. And yeah, I don't know. Does it make people feel more significant to be outraged? I don't know. I'm not a social psychologist. I try to augment human performance by both physical and mental. Yeah, I don't know. Is there an identity in outrage? I don't know. But you're right. And by the way, this is very I mean, this is really common in the field of nutrition. People don't just say, well, I follow the carnivore diet. They say, you're an absolute idiot if you don't follow the carnivore diet.
Yeah, or you're a bloodthirsty
Right,
killer
right.
if you eat meat.
Yes. I mean, right, these people are fighting each other. And people ask me all the time, Tony, why don't you have a great, background or solid background in nutrition? I'm not, I'm not going to sit here. There's, if we want to fight on how to feed starving children and one person thinks they have a great solution and so does the other, that's a good argument. But to sit here And I mean, they are just destroying each other as human beings because of different eating protocols and dietary habits. And anybody who studied, let's go back to evolutionary biology just quickly, right? There's no one way to eat. I mean, if I'm an Inuit 10,000 years ago, I don't have the luxury of eating the way the tribes, or I don't know who was native to the areas of Samoa then, but let's just say it was the same Samoan people of today. They eat completely different than the people of Alaska, northern Canada, Siberia. Like, and here are people fighting. And I think a lot of times, Mookie, people are more concerned in nutrition, in health and wellness too, and is like any other arena, they're more concerned about being correct than accurate. And they won't admit to, well, maybe this isn't the only way to do it. I was right. I was right. Anyway, the tragedy in it is here we got a great way to help people, maybe find them just as much as there's 100 ways to exercise. There are a lot of different ways to eat healthy. And that should be the message. But how do we hurt people in the field? Nope. Got to go carnivore. Nope. Should eat a lot of carbs. Nope. Better be vegan. Oh, this diet's no good. This one food is no good. So anyway, that's the tragedy of the species is reductionism, if you will. And I remember, and I'll close it out on this. I was somebody said to me once, Tony, you don't always see things in black and white. I'm more of a black and white thinker, they said to me. And I just said, a black and white thinker is an oxymoron. Um, it doesn't work that way. There's a lot of in betweens. And I think if we could all accept the exceptions to every rule in physical activity or nutrition, and try to have each person write their own fitness or wellness journey, we'll be in a much better place, man. That's what we should be enticing people to do, is to help them to find their journey, not my journey, right? And
I think that nails it, which
yep,
is we're all unique. We might share the same atmosphere and consume similar foods, but deep down inside, we are unique to
yep.
our 37 trillion cells in our body, right? We're our own entity. And I think you're really getting at something here about personalization combined with making it fun and loving what you do. So my takeaways from our conversation having to do with how do we solve the health and wellness problem, which we addressed at the first part of our conversation, which is people know they need to exercise and be more active, but they don't do it. And your recommendation was have fun with it. Stop being such a perfectionist and
Hmm.
just and then figure out ways where you can enjoy your health and wellness and then
Absolutely.
activate that and integrate it into your life to the point where you're actually looking forward to doing it. And it could be as simple as taking a 20-minute walk or bench pressing 300 pounds in 10 sets. It doesn't matter. Just love what you do and do it like Burger King. Have it your way, right? And
Perfect.
then conversely, we're talking about society and we're talking about how this mean spiritedness and competitiveness gone to its extremes, coupled with data saturation and avarice, right? Money, money, money,
Hmm.
comments, 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 making us all crazy. And it sounds like you're offering a similar type of solution in that area too, which is do it your way, take your own approach to things, but remember why we're doing this in the first place, which is it's a labor of love for the sake of just having a great time. And in sports, we do it together. And there's no reason that we can't love what we do together in a way where we're not being so shitty to each other.
You that about sums it up. You got it. We can't even enjoy something without fighting each other that we're supposed to sit back and enjoy, and sport being that example. But to just close what you said perfectly, yes, just there's even if it takes finding the way to move that you dislike the least, if there's no way you like to move, then let's start with that. Because Mookie got himself into into jogging when he hated every step. And I think you give certain things the opportunity, like you did, okay? And then you may just find, hey, not bad. And when you start that walk 20 minutes a day, you may find something else along the way and go, oh, pretty cool. I think I'm going to try that. And that's a different form of activity. So, for anybody on a fitness journey, I can say this: please just whatever you do, it'll just help you, and do it for yourself and stay active and let that body move and let the blood circulate. And the benefits, you said it very well earlier, Mookie. It's the one thing where you're guaranteed to go out, do something, and get a payback. You'll
Yeah,
get
it's
a
all
pay.
about you. And crawl,
Yep.
walk, run. When I first started running, I used the Map My Run app,
Yeah.
and it shows a little drawing on the map of your location, like your route. And
Yep.
then I realized that I could draw pictures with my run. So then
I remember that
I
now.
accidentally I made a duck because I ran like a half mile in the neighborhood, weaving back around.
Right.
And then I thought I'd be like like a 5-year-old, and then I made a big dick, in Carl Place, Long Island, when I'm like building up my chops. And then I've since found there are dudes and gals on the internet who make elaborate kind of drawings on their app. You know what I mean? All
I think it's
sorts of.
excellent. You
eh,
found a way to love running.
well, that's it. I use that to illustrate and bring together everything we're talking about, which is
Yep.
be whimsical.
Exactly.
Be mediocre, be whimsical, have a good time, and just feel great about everything you do. And then, all your literal or figurative ducks will get in a row behind you, right? So
Perfect.
so that's awesome. Do you have a few references or links or places that listeners can go to kind of maybe learn a little bit more about some of the things that you're recommending, some of your own background? I mean, I follow you on all the social medias, and
Yeah.
you're hanging out with like the MMA gal who is just she could kick my ass by just looking at me. You know what I mean? She would give me a menacing stare and knock me out.
Yeah, there's
You
some
you
tough ones there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Just for the listeners to know, you have such an illustrious career in the academy, and you're just hands on. You're in the ring. You're a trainer. You're a performance coach, and I would just love for listeners to learn a little bit more about the great work that you've done. Some of the star athletes that you've trained, because I personally get so much inspiration from just seeing you do what you do.
Well, thanks. So I just, some time ago, I just really, I use Instagram. I should probably upgrade and start some TikTok. But, if you put my name in, Tony Ricci, Ricci, the Instagram name is Sport, PSY, Sport Psy
Yeah, and
underslash.
we'll put the
Yeah.
link. We'll put the
Yeah.
link in the description too,
Yeah,
so
well,
you'll be able to
they
just
can
click.
go to
Yeah.
that, and then what I
Yeah.
will do too is I'm going to send you some really good research articles. What I think is most important today too is I'm going to send you some cool stuff by Blumenthal and some of the people that do great research on how good the physical activity is just for our brain particularly and for our mind. And I'm going to send some really cool links on that. And there's an organization called the Society for Sports Neuroscience, which is also on Instagram, Society for Sports Neuroscience. And we just post, I'm the vice president, but this is not a self promotion. We just post so many good resources pertaining to the benefits of physical activity. And the good news being physical activity in all forms and how beneficial it is to body and mind. And that's really a message that I hope everybody can to receive, because it you like I said, no matter what you do, no matter what you care about in life, if you just stay a little bit active, you'll be better at it, and everyone around you will have a better version of you. So that's the things I want to share. I'm going to give you some links that will direct people to great resources that would probably be very good in encouraging them. You know what the guy said, what Mookie and Tony said, man, let me just go for a walk, let's get started.
Yeah, that's wonderful, Tone. And to quote Sam Jackson in Pulp Fiction,
I love it.
you're a smart motherfucker.
I love that movie, by the way. I'm a big Tarantino fan.
And there's a mathematician named Ricci, and there's actually an entire branch of topology called Ricci flow.
Wow,
So I wonder if you guys are related. We should do a 23andMe or
I
something.
think I'll do that.
Steal
I'm
your
pissed. Yeah, I'm
it.
pissed off because you're a good mathematician. I'm not.
Yeah, but I think it might be lurking there in your DNA. It's like
We'll have to go find that.
the Tony Ricci flow.
You got
I'll
it.
put a link to that. It actually helped this guy Gregor Canner win the Millennial Prize.
Oh wow. Okay.
Gregor Perlman actually is his name.
Okay.
Won the Millennial Prize to prove Poincaré's conjecture using Ricci flow. So
Whoa.
that'll be my link to
You
bring it
got me
full
excited.
circle.
I'm gonna have to learn
Yeah,
more.
yeah,
All
it's a
right.
Ricci. Yeah, maybe it's in the family, Tone. Anyway, thanks so much for listening to the Bald Ambition podcast with your two bald
Yeah.
participants today, Mookie and Tony. It's been a real pleasure, Tone.
I've
Thanks so
enjoyed
much
it,
for
Mookie.
joining us, sharing your insights and experience. And I'm motivated now. I'm going out and getting on my bike, and I might take a ride because
That's why you're in California.
I
Go
want
enjoy
to
that
pump
weather.
it up. That's
There
right.
you
Thanks so
go.
much, Tone.
Take care, Mookie. Thank you
Yeah, bye
much.
bye. Stay
Bye.
healthy, buddy. Bye
You
bye.
too.